Just like in a great marriage, if you don't have trust and accountability, you're not talking to your partner, you're not telling them what's going on. The same thing happens in software. You've got a team of people. If they don't trust you, they're not going to tell you what's going on. They're not going to talk to each other. They're going to work in silos.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier Podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, we're here with Rob Wlaschin. And Rob is I don't know if I butchered your last name, dude. I'm so sorry. But Rob is a fractional CTO with experience in AI, ads monetization, strategy, and all things engineering. And you're probably just going to have to say your last name for me because I'm pretty sure I screwed it up. But tell us more about yourself, Rob.
Actually did a great job with my last name. Thank you. Most people butcher it anyway. I only known like one person who said it correctly on the first try without some sort of guidance. So anyway.
Cool. Cool.
I've been in the industry for about, 40 years or something like that. I started when I was pretty young. I did a lot of games work, did embedded stuff, so on and so forth. Right now I'm working on the cloud stuff and definitely AI. I've just updated my certification and stuff for that as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So today we're talking about practicing intentional accountability. So I'm guessing this is something that you've kind of picked up along the way through the years of just leading teams. So we'll get into that in just a few minutes. And we'll unpack that concept, because I think it's going to be a really useful one for the tech leaders out there that want to help promote team flourishing. So before we get into that, Rob, tell us about a book that you've been reading lately that's made an impact on you. I'm ready to buy a new book.
Great. So books that I've been reading recently, so like Mega Memory.
That's a good one.
As you get older, right, you don't remember things as good. So it gives you some tips and secrets. There's a couple different like memory type things. They're all usually pretty useful. The other one's called The Memory Book and a couple other things. Also, always refresh on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Most people read that already. And Carnegie's How to Influence People, Make Friends and Influence People. And then I'm reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0 right now. So.
Okay, you're in the middle of a few books. I can see why you need the memory books, just to help you maybe remember where all the books are.
Thanks. They're on right here on my desk.
Hey, so Rob, this podcast is all about like humanizing tech leadership. Mm-hmm. And so in order to like really get ourselves on the right foot, I want to humanize my guest also. So step into my confession booth, Rob. You can't escape at this point. And it's just you and me. So don't worry about like everybody else listening in. Tell us about an embarrassing mistake that you've made as a tech leader.
So as a tech leader, I haven't made too many mistakes because I actually learned really the hard way by having a bunch of bad bosses.
Yeah.
But I have some tech blunders I made. So when I was like a lead engineer, I had a VP of engineering come to me. He had excitedly looked through the code base and decided that this code didn't need to be there anymore. And so I looked at it and we were upgrading the product to a new hardware version. And I said, okay, sure, we'll remove that. It was a phone number. And so we went through, we tested everything, works great. That release went out just fine. And then later on, we're like, okay, we're going to merge this code base with the code base, the other one, so it's easier to maintain. So we went through and somehow in that process, we removed that phone number again. Deadlines were tight. And so my boss at the time ran both QA and engineering. So he told the QA people to shortcut some tests. So they didn't actually test some of the stuff. So we released it to the field and suddenly 40,000 units could no longer connect. I learned that just because your boss says do it, don't. Mm-hmm. Especially if he's not working in the code regularly, if he gives you advice, definitely make sure that there's no repercussions to getting rid of those lines of code. It had another piece of code somewhere in the program that actually checked for a specific item in the list of phone numbers. Item 0 had to match something perfectly. And if it didn't, it would just blow up. And when we released it, since we didn't use that phone number very often, actually it was a group in the Netherlands. They couldn't access. They just stopped working completely.
I heard a deadline in there too in your story. And I don't know I can't think of too many like project disasters that didn't have a deadline in there somewhere that was kind of like the root cause of the issue.
Yeah. The key thing to take away from this is when you're in a hurry, don't rush. Right? So there's certain aspects of your project you don't want to skimp on. One is the testing, right? Because developers can't test everything, right? It's impossible. Even if you got unit tests, they don't, there's still things that you miss.
Yeah.
So when the QA says we want to test stuff, let them do it. Don't be like, no, we're not going to let you test that because we don't think you need it, because we're obviously the experts at testing because you test all the time and we don't. That's right. So let them do their job. Don't step in their way. That way, when you get out to production, you don't have the, $150 million error. Yeah.
Yeah. That's accountability right there. And hey, how's this for a segue? So tell me about intentional accountability and trust and accountability. Like, what are we talking about today, Rob?
So basically, it comes down to being able to work well as a team, right? But just like saying, hey, we're buddies, and just because we Slack all the time doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the best working relationship with your devs, right? So you actually need to make an effort and do certain things to build trust relationship with the people that you work with, so you can get these, people to tell you about difficulties they're having, so you don't end up releasing the doomed project into the Netherland abyss.
Now tell me about what does this have to do with human flourishing? Because that's really what this podcast is all about, is helping team and tech leaders to build teams that flourish. So what does trust and accountability have to do with that?
Yeah. So just like in a great marriage, if you don't have trust and accountability, you're not talking to your partner. You're not telling them what's going on. The same thing happens in software. You've got a team of people. If they don't trust you, they're not going to tell you what's going on. They're not going to talk to each other. They're going to work in silos. Silos don't work very well. That's why they're right. Accountability means that when I deploy something, I know that I did the best I could on it. And I checked everything, right? So if we don't have trust, we're definitely not going to be telling people that we really worked on this and we did, X work on it, because we're afraid that if we miss something, we're going to get in trouble or something like that. So we really need to have the trust and the accountability so that we can talk to each other and make sure that we as a team can uncover mistakes and provide really good code.
So what is intentional accountability? Because I know what accountability is, and I can hold people in my team accountable. People can hold me accountable for things. I can be accountable to everybody in my company. But what is intentional accountability?
So it's making sure that you're on a daily basis putting together the process and the tools for the team to make sure that they are able to execute accountability. Because you can talk about accountability, right? And you can say, make sure you're doing this and that. But if you're not in there every day, right, and making sure they're doing the steps, then they stop doing it. So an intentional accountability is making sure that they're able to do the accountability without you just sitting on top of them all the time. So it comes to like some automation tools to help them remember, like do this, do that, setting up your PR template. So it says, make sure you're covering these particular things. And then the other people on the team supporting as well. So if we're missing a step, they don't just say like, oh, it's fine, we're going to pass that through. It's, hey, I noticed that you forgot this video or whatever. Can you please add this and I can do the code review, instead of just like everyone like shuffling it under the rug.
So what we're really talking about is like setting up systems and automation and funnels that enable everybody else on the team to hold each other accountable and hold you as a tech leader accountable and hold the systems accountable. So intentional accountability is proactive and preemptive as a way to help everybody to fall into the pit of success.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a great way to say it.
So tell me about some of these systems that we might be able to set up to hold people accountable.
Sure.
You mentioned the PRs and like pre-formatting the text. What else can we do?
There's a great tool that I use. It's called Geekbot. There are other tools like this as well, but basically Geekbot allows me to put in like daily updates. And so every day it pings the developer when they sign on and says, hey, did you do this? Or, tell me what you're working on today. Tell me what you finished yesterday, right? And it helps them stay on top of the things they're doing. Because oftentimes you're working on something and you say, okay, I'm going to finish these 3 things today. But what happened was somebody came in from department X and they're like, can you work on this other thing? It's a high priority. And so the developer has to switch. So what they finished wasn't there, right? So it's got to be communicated, right, to the product manager or whoever, right? So we know that this task might be behind. So by putting through this automated system, they can go and say, oh, I was working on this and, but I didn't finish what I said I was going to do yesterday, right? This is the part where trust comes in though, because just because I've got this thing, they may not put like their details in there correctly, right? So then we have to also build trust. So besides the wonderful notifications, right? Also, you can go through PR. You can set up a template. GitHub allows you to set up templates for PRs. One of the things that we do is we make sure that we have a specific naming convention. So we have the ticket name in the title, which I think a lot of people do this anyway. Also, we put the link for the ticket in the description. We also put a video. So most of the time, the developers need to demo their stuff working. This is part of where the accountability comes. So when they make the video, they have to go through their thing working, and they'll go through some of the use cases as well. If you watch a video and you see that it's missing, like it only shows like the basic course events or the happy path, you know that the developer probably needs to do something different. So you say, hey, can you provide me a video with some of the edge cases or whatever it is, right? So you can see what's going on. Because you lose a lot of time reading through code reviews. And if you have to go back and forth a lot, that's a problem, right? But if you can watch the video, you can see that it's working already. Then when you look at the code, it's a lot easier. So you're like looking for styling and maybe some minor logic errors, not for the whole thing. It's like, does this work? Do I have to download it and run it myself? You can see that it's working for the dev. The other thing we do is we have quarterly training on documentation. Also, I take feedback from the people who are using it. It's like, hey, this is difficult. This isn't working. And then at that quarter, we review first so everyone can have their input, and we'll update the documentation so it's clear. These are pretty standard things that I think most people probably are doing anyway. But documentation is difficult to keep updated. So you really have to be intentional about that. Otherwise, it becomes stale. And if you're not reading it or reviewing it quarterly, it's the same thing as not having the documentation. They forget. And then also, if they don't follow the process, like they're missing something in the PR that was supposed to be part of the process, you refer to the process and say, hey, can you check your PR, please? The process here is this, and I think you might have overlooked some steps. Can you please check this, right? So you don't have to go to the person and say, oh, you screwed up, blah, 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 right? You can just refer them the documentation, say, can you review this? I think you're missing some steps here and here. Please update. And usually people don't like that, right? So they'll clean it up, right? And then they can see that you did it and no one really got into trouble. And then they'll start referring and doing it to each other as well. So then people are actually using the documentation.
Yeah. The documentation is really, really big. I can see how that would provide some intentional accountability and being able to refer back to that process instead of having to come up with new way of communicating a correction every time is powerful too. Because, if you don't like to be the bad guy, then you don't have to be the bad guy. You can just send them a message and say, hey, here's the document. I'm sorry, it's not me. It's the documentation.
Y'all read it. You agreed on it. It's like it's the bad guy. Get mad at the Yeah, that's right. It definitely does. It shifts the blame, right? It's like, oh, I'm not the bad guy here. I'm just notifying you. The documentation says this. Can you just review it and then fix it? Yeah. So
something that my team also does is, and we've been doing this for years, it's been awesome, is that we do this thing called walking the board.
Oh,
And we have now we'll have like they're not status meetings, but like a Scrum stand up is kind of what people might describe it as. But we don't do the typical Scrum ceremony. We do this other format that we call walking the board. And because of how the board is set up, this Kanban board, it's kind of following a Kanban format. But because of the way the board is set up, and because of how we use this, in our case, this Trello board, the process of walking the board on a daily basis, 15-minute meeting where the entire team together looks at what we are delivering and how far is this away from being delivered, what left to do on this, and then this, who's in charge of moving this to the next level and what's left to do. And like that conversation that's very delivery focused, but then using the Kanban board, that information radiator as an accountability tool, we see like it holds everybody accountable in an automated way. Like every day that meeting, everybody knows that it's coming. They're going to make sure that they've got the right amount of work done so that they don't look like they've been sitting around watching Netflix all the time. And
cat videos.
Yeah, cat, exactly. I should say cat videos because that's free. Everybody can get that. But yeah, I mean, if a card is ever there in doing for too long, everybody on the team sees, and that conversation is had in the open. And it's a very good, healthy process. And it seems to be kind of doing what you're talking about here, where it kind of intentionally automates that accountability in a team. In your teams, do you have any kind of meetings like that hold everybody accountable, or do you typically do things async?
So we usually have to do things async because our teams are usually spread all over the world. Usually somebody has to meet at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and then it doesn't go so well. So that's why we do the GitHub stuff, right? And it's the project manager sees that one of these tasks isn't getting done, then they'll engage that engineer and say, okay, I noticed that you had these other tasks, or this is going on. How can we help you? What do we need to do differently? Can we move some tasks off? This other person is, getting stuff done a little faster or whatever it is. I mean, that happens when there's production issues, right? Somebody has to address it so another task can get popped off, right?
So the way that any team might attack this idea of or implement intentional accountability in their own context is going to be different for all these different characteristics. Like for me, everything is synchronous. And so it's very easy to get together and have those meetings, but then other teams might have to do things in asynchronous ways. One like rock star asynchronous tool that is going to help everybody to stay accountable is a CI/CD server that's reporting back to the team. That's like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised. I don't know, Rob, if you've seen this before in your consulting, but sometimes software teams have opted to put off the CI/CD server until much later in the process when they actually need it. But it's actually one of those intentional accountability systems that they probably need from day one and is not too hard to set up.
Yeah, that's true. So a lot of people though, so I'm not the boss usually because it's a fractional CTO. I can make recommendations, but usually the CEO's like, oh, we don't have a lot of time. We don't have this, we don't have that. So we can't do this type of thing. So you kind of do the best you can, but we try to put in the hooks. So part of your PRs, the CI/CDs, you can actually report whether they passed or failed. And you can also send that information to Slack, right? So when tests get run, it goes into Slack. So part of the thing that we do, so if my client doesn't want to, oh, look at that. My client doesn't want to do unit tests. Instead, we'll do integration tests. So we use Postman to test the back end. So every time you make a new feature, you have to make a new integration test. And Postman runs automatically, and it'll post to Slack, and it runs weekly or daily, whatever you want, and it sends you emails. So it's a really good tool. It's usually a little faster to set up an integration test because you just pass through arguments to your endpoint or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, this is the response. Here's some other ones. This is the response. Usually unit tests take a lot longer because you've got to go through all the different functions. You got 30 functions. You got to write 60 tests.
Yeah.
Right. 2 tests for each, right? It's usually more than that. Right. So you could save yourself a little bit of time by doing integration tests. Obviously, you don't have the same amount of coverage with the unit test that you do with the integration test, right? But the integration tests are still a really good tool, and they can kind of help you bridge that gap. Also, unit tests are very difficult to maintain on new code bases where the architecture may not be cemented in stone because the product is changing a lot. So imagine you've got 60 or 70 unit tests and they decide to change the whole API. You now have to rewrite all of those unit tests, which is a no-no. You're not supposed to change unit tests. But if the feature goes away, right, then you're stuck. Where integration tests, you only have a couple. If they get rid of that endpoint, okay, not really a problem. You make a new endpoint, you work forward, whatever it is. So sometimes integration tests can kind of help you out if the powers that be say we don't have enough time for that. So.
Well, the time is a big factor because, sometimes we're running against the clock. We're trying to race to the market and we don't really have enough time to put together these different things. Yeah. I put it in air quotes because sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that we don't have time, but really we skip something that may have saved us a lot of time down the road. And like based on our experience as tech leaders, we know this is something we need, but then the people that are making the decisions don't agree, or they don't have the experience to know that's really what they should do. And this other thing just seems more intuitive to me. So let's go with that. But so the time is a big issue. And it's one reason why people might not go with some of these systems that help us to be intentionally accountable, or holding people accountable intentionally. So what do you think are some other reasons why tech leaders might not decide to go down this road?
Definitely pressure, right? So we've got pressure, we've got deadlines. People can feel overwhelmed. So like, what can I do? I've got to meet these things. Also, sometimes we ask the developers for deadlines without understanding what they've got to do. So they give us kind of like an off-the-cuff estimate, which is not realistic. Right. So if we've got unrealistic expectations of what the developer can do, given that we didn't give him a proper, like, this is what needs to be done, or time to look to see what it'll take, then we're going to have to shortcut because we have already put ourselves in a position to shortcut because we didn't say, guess what? We're giving you the time to succeed here. We're like, you only have the time to fail. Right? So now they're in this cycle of doomsday. I can't get this done. I promised this. What can I drop? And it's always the testing. However, now that I've said that, there's something which is vibe coding.
I want to hear about this.
So vibe coding is coding with AI. So frankly, there's no excuse to not run or write unit tests anymore because you can tell the AI to do it. Right? If you're using any of the AI tools, literally it's, can see your code and you're just like, write the unit test for this and it'll write them out. You do have to be careful. Sometimes it mocks the functions and then doesn't actually run the tests, but you can look and make sure it's doing the right things. But like it takes minutes now to write unit tests. So you just do them, which is really nice.
I got to try that out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm developing a AI coding engine to be a little bit smarter about writing some of these unit tests and doing some other things. So my tests will be there automatically and people can work with it and it should be fantastic.
Do you think that tech leaders might be skeptical about the outcomes that they might get from intentional accountability?
I'm not sure. I know that if you're afraid to fail, and you be intentional about something and then you fail at it, you just opened yourself up, right? So that's part of the trust, right? Being intentional gets your team on the right path to be successful. So if you have that goal in mind and you don't mind making mistakes, right? And being open about making mistakes, then there's no problem with being intentional, right? If you aren't intentional, then I think the rule is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. right? It's the same thing. Like, I didn't plan to help guide the people who are working for me in a way which will make them successful for this project. So they're probably going to do whatever they think is best, and
Yeah.
we're gonna have some difficulties here and there, and so on and so forth. Like, one of the things when I came into a project is they didn't have an intentional process for doing merges or branch releases, and the dev would regularly deploy the wrong branch. Right? So if we do the intentional aspect, we look at what they're doing. We're like, okay, we can make these couple changes by doing this type of branch. Let's make a release branch with the date, right? And then when you have that release branch, we will then branch that one to the test or to main based on which cycle we're in. And that way we don't make that mistake anymore, right? Most developers or leads or tech managers are going to advise some sort of methodology like that anyway. So
Yeah.
just like making sure we're doing this for the other things too, like getting together as a group, like you do an intentional thing where we're meeting daily and we're looking at the board together and we're helping each other, right? So given that they're doing that and they're used to it, they're building that trust, because you're not going in there saying, oh, you didn't do your stuff, shame on you, you're going to get fired, right? It's like, oh, you had a difficulty. Can we move this around? Do we need to change the dates? Do we need to tell someone else? Like, what's happening here? Right? It's about equipping people to be successful.
But, you know, when I see teams implementing Agile or Kanban, and then a few months later ditching it and doing something else, or like throwing out this time-tested process or tool, which I've seen 100 times work, but they throw it out because it didn't work. I think that might also contribute to some of the skepticism that people might experience when they want to implement things that are intentionally accountable. Like even my example from earlier about walking the board. I've told people about that, and some people have tried to implement it, and then they come back to me and say, well, that didn't really work for us. And maybe they're completely right. Maybe it actually wasn't for them, but also, and I think this is often the case, people don't necessarily understand how something is really supposed to work. And then they try to implement it just by watching a YouTube video and, oh, okay, I've got that format down. I'm going to go start implementing it over here. And they don't get the results they're looking for. And it's probably because they didn't get the meaning behind it. There was some characteristic of the ceremony that they just didn't understand at the time. And so they implemented it slightly wrong, and then it just didn't work. And I think that people might, if they just take some of the examples from this show and just try to implement them from rote memory, then they might not get the results they're looking for. So what is it that we really want people to understand at the core? What are they really trying to accomplish?
So the goal is to build trust, right? It's not about trying to stack on a lot of process. There's like the doomsday process hole where you have so much process that you don't get anything done. So each team is different. You're not going to come into your team and you're going to say, do these 12,000 things all today, right? That's not great for your team. That makes them uncomfortable. People don't like change. Who Moved My Cheese is a book you can read too. But you do it slowly and you think, what's the biggest problem that we're having right now? Maybe it's your deploys are poor. Like you've got a lot of bugs or something like that. So, okay, so what's the best way we can fix that? So I would recommend like the PRs having the people do the videos. That's one thing. It's very easy for people to do. It's not going to make them feel overwhelmed. And then you start
But it builds trust.
It builds trust. Yeah. You're like, okay, great. And you make sure that when they do something you ask them to do, you're like, great job. So-and-so is adding videos. Look at this video. It's good, right? Make sure that you're telling the people when they're doing a good job, and kind of ignore when they're doing a bad job, and like privately be like, oh, you forgot this. Can you add it? Right. But definitely it's the praise in public and then criticize in private, or I forget what it is, but it's like, right. You want to make sure that you're properly giving people credit when they're doing the right things, because everyone likes credit, right? Like, oh, I feel good about that. I did a good job, right? Think about the last time you went to like a review for your job, right? It's like when he tells you, oh, you did good at this, right? You're like, oh, and then he's like, oh, but you didn't do good here. You're like, oh, right? So if you reinforce with positive praise, right? Then the people will do it and they start working together. When somebody does a good PR, when they get a bug that gets fixed by doing the process, right? Like, oh, great, good job. Look, the unit tests here are working for the CI/CD. We caught this issue before it went to QA, right? So-and-so got the thing done on time. Good job. Thanks for doing that estimate, right? You do have to be careful about praising the wrong things. So there's vanity metrics.
Yeah.
So if you praise vanity metrics, then people will focus on getting those things done instead of the things you want. So you have to be careful there. But like when people give good, do their good daily updates or give good feedback, you say, oh, thank you so much. You did a great job here. I really appreciate that, right? So people know it's okay to give feedback, right? Yeah, it's all about building the team to work good together, to be efficient, so they can be open with each other. It's not about do this process exactly the way I told you right now. You have 5,000 things new that you need to do, right? It's add the one thing, get it working, get them all on board, and then add the next thing until eventually you've got all of those pieces put together. It keeps your team from falling apart and destroying your morale.
So intentional accountability is about setting your team up to build trust between each other and between you, the leader, and the team, and vice versa. The team also needs to learn to trust you. And it's about setting up systems that cause that trust to grow over time by building up a history. Like if I'm thinking of a Git history now, a commit history. If you see that you can trust that something was done, like as you're verifying things, you see that you can trust, or your trust is rewarded with, something good happened. You trusted them and it worked.
That's right.
And if that happens over and over and over, then your experimental trust is replaced with actual trust to the point where you just almost forget. And it's also okay that you forget to verify because you have these other systems in place that are continuing that accountability.
Yeah.
And I think of a chair. Like I've got some chairs out here in my office, and every time I sit in those chairs, they hold me up. It's amazing. And like I've sat in those chairs like 1,000 times, and every single time they work. It's amazing. I can even go out into a public place and I can find a chair and I can sit in it. I've never even seen this chair before. I've never sat in this chair before. And for some reason, I still have trust that when I sit in it, it's going to work. And I think that's where we want to get with our teams. Maybe in the case of the chairs, there's an automated process in place that, there are other people that sat in these chairs, and I saw that person sat in that chair and he's way bigger than me. So it must hold me up. And like, I think that we kind of want to get to that point with our own systems, right? Our own automations. And as we're trying to implement this intentional accountability.
Yeah.
So as people are starting this process, they're convinced they want to start setting up these systems that build this trust over time. What do you think people are going to overlook? What are the pits they're going to fall into as they are trying to do this?
Definitely making sure to, like, at the beginning say, oh, good job for doing that. Also, so like if you're doing the Geekbot daily updates, specificity. So some people just copy and paste and do the same thing every day. You don't want to reward that behavior. That's a no-no. They need to put in there the ticket or whatever they're working on, right? They don't need to say, I had 12 meetings today and we talked about this, right? They can do overviews, but definitely it's making sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to, not to the letter of the law, but to the spirit of the law, right? Because you don't want them to do the task in a way which actually makes it harder for the team to understand their responsibility, right? It's like you want them to make a PR. So you say, okay, we need videos. So they make this video, which is like 70 minutes long, right? That's not effective, right? So you want to make sure that when they're doing it in a way which actually increases trust and accountability, because no one's going to watch the 70-minute video. However,
Right.
if you've got a short, like maybe 3 30-second videos to show it's working this way, it's working this way, it's working that way, people will watch that, right? It saves time. The one where they're talking for 4.5 hours and they go to the bathroom and get a cookie and come back and so on and so forth, that's not, right? That's not going to help any. And then obviously, like I just mentioned, the daily updates, like they're not putting the tickets. If they're not saying who they needed help from, right? They're missing a bunch of things in the updates. So people really don't understand what they're really trying to communicate. It's not going to be effective. So at the beginning, you definitely want to make sure that the spirit is being followed, less so the letter, right?
Yeah. Also, I'll add that intentional accountability does not mean just intentionally trusting everybody and like right off the bat, like, okay, I just hired you. I don't know you. You're a chair that I've never sat on. I don't know if that connects, but I don't know you. I don't know your work. I don't have any history with you. So I don't have any actual trust, but I'm covered up. I'm too busy. I don't have anything better. So I'm just going to, throw caution to the wind and just say, here's what I need and let you go and do it. That's not what an intentional accountability is, because it's not trust without reason. We need to have a reason to trust someone. And that's what intentional accountability to me is all about, is setting up systems to allow people to build up trust. It's not automatic trust. This is not intentional, automatic, reckless trust. This is accountability, which is something that builds trust.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, it's a history. I think you mentioned it twice, once at the beginning and then the GitHub example. It's building a pattern of trust, right? Yeah, if you go over to like an office building and you see you need a pen and there's a bunch of pens in there, you'll grab one and then you check it to make sure it works first before you like try to take, back to your room and then try to write your paper with it, right? You're going to check them first, right? So at the beginning, it's more important to be watching them closer to make sure they're following through the steps. And you can even assign someone on the team, usually the lead, to make sure that new person is doing the steps appropriately. Yeah. Because as if you're a CTO or something, you're not going to be in the daily details all the time, right? That's not what you should be doing. That's right. That's too much in the details, in the weeds, right? So you've got to train the people below you so then they can go do the same thing. I think the rule is do one, watch one, train one. So you do it, you have someone watch you do it, and then you have them train someone else. Something like that, 1, 2, 3. So by the time they've, the middle step, you're on the same page, you're doing it together. And then the third time, then they take over. You don't train anymore. They now train somebody else.
Sounds a lot like Shuhari.
Yeah, what's this?
That's I love Shuhari. If you haven't heard of it, you need to check it out. It's so cool, like a model of how people grow and learn. But that's for a different episode. So for now, Rob, to kind of wrap things up, Tell me about a time that you saw intentional accountability actually leading to unexpected outcomes.
Oh, usually it's expected outcomes. Right. So we had a team that was having difficulty getting the QA. And so by adding in the videos, right, which was one of the easy things to do, we were able to save time and get better results. So first of all, when you're making the video, usually you look at it yourself and you're really testing it and you notice, oh, whoops, that didn't work right. So you lose that, I guess it's the manager syndrome. So usually when you go to demo something for your manager, it doesn't work right. So when you're demoing it in the video, usually you'd hit those goofy little things and you'd fix them right away. So you end up with better quality going into the PR. Also, we save time because the dev reviewing didn't have to pull down the PRs anymore and run it on his system to make sure it was working, because he could see in the video, oh yeah, we see it's working right here. We see that you ran these test cases. So we were able to, improve our code quality just by adding those videos. And then we just made sure, like, you have a new release, you've got to show me the video. We also allowed them to like show us the data objects. Like sometimes the backend or database stuff, it's too hard to do videos. So we'd like, this is the input, this is what the output was. Sometimes we let them do that as well, but they had to prove that it was working. So
if somebody is
This has been
wanting
another
to try
episode
their
of the
hand at
Team
this, they're
Amplifier
wanting to kind of
podcast. Thanks
start
for joining
implementing
us.
the
Now,
idea of
get out
intentional
there
accountability in
and
their own
be a
teams.
team amplifier.
What can you tell them is something that they could do like tomorrow or in the next 5 minutes to promote team flourishing?
Mhm.
What's something that they could start trying right now?
So it would depend on what their biggest problems are, but I would recommend changing the format of their daily stand-ups. What you're doing is really good. Obviously, if you have a lot of tasks that are never going to get done because they're super big, those meetings can be really difficult. No one's going to be on task, right? If you're not following the agile method, it's not going to work. Which is, what is 80-20 rule? What can you get done? Can you get done 80% of the task in 1 week type of thing, right? And the tasks have to be small. If they're huge, you'd never get done. They'd sit there forever, right? For me, it's the same sort of thing. It would be the automated Slack updates, right? Where everyone, when they start at the beginning of their day or at the end, I usually do it at the beginning, they write down, this is what I'm working on today. This is what I finished yesterday or whatever. And these are people who I need help from. Just those 3 simple things. Make sure they're putting in links to their tickets or the ticket number so you know that they're working on the particular tickets. Because sometimes people work on tickets they're not supposed to every once in a while. And then you can catch that ahead of time because they're working in the wrong order or something like that. But like those 2 things are very simple to set up, very simple to execute, and it gives you an opportunity to praise them for, hey, thank you so much. You got that finished today. Wonderful job, right?
Yeah. And it starts generating a history of trustworthy events or events when they were shown as trustworthy.
Yeah.
Love it.
Setting up new unit tests, that's kind of, it might be a little bit of a headache, right? But doing just a daily stand-up, changing the format of that's easy. You're already doing a stand-up probably anyway. Just update the format, right? Yeah.
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 So Rob, how can listeners get a hold of you or connect with you?
So I have an email, obviously, but I have a website. You can go to my website. You can set up an appointment with me. It's tesla-it.com, and you can connect with me and go from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the next one. We need to start thinking about what we're going to talk about next. But for now, this episode's on the books.
Perfect.
Great job.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Take it easy.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a team amplifier.